This upcoming week is one of the biggest weeks of the year for fantasy football drafts. The preseason is over, the season is right around the corner, and we can draft with confidence. It also means that it's time for us to go over our final off-season rankings. In today's show, we're covering quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Now, these rankings we're going through today are going to be consensus tier rankings of Kyle and myself. This is actually a little snippet from our draft guide. If you need more information to dominate your draft, there's links to the draft guide down below in the comment section. But today, I'm going to be covering the top 15 quarterbacks, the top 15 tight ends, and then the top 30 running backs and wide receivers. Now, we will be doing ranking shows for you every single week of the season. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. But we're actually going to be welcoming a new member here to the channel this season. I need you all to welcome Brad Chandler to the channel. Brad is going to be delivering our weekly rankings to you all season long. Now here's a quick message from Brad.
Hey Headliner Nation, it's your boy Brad Chandler, the rankings king himself, and I'm so glad to be with you during the 2025 season. Look, if you're anything like me, you've already sent screenshots to all of your buddies with the perfect draft lineup, and you already sound like a Cowboys fan saying this is the year. But you already know, even with the perfect draft strategy, the difference between winning your league and avoiding those dastardly draft punishments are those week-to-week adjustments. So each week we'll be right here with quarterback rankings, running back rankings, wide receiver rankings, and hey, even the tight ends to keep you at the top of the heap. Anyway, Headliner Nation, fired up to be with you guys. Let's get it. Back to you, Jake.
Awesome. So be sure to throw a little wave emoji down in the comment section to Brad and welcome him to Headliner Nation. He's a great dude and he's going to be fun to watch all season long as well. Having Brad join the team really opens us up to delivering even more content to you weekly. But okay, on to rankings. Now I gotta remind people, if our rankings do not match, it's okay. If everyone had the same rankings, they would be pointless to even watch. Maybe we have some differences on some players. That's cool. Hearing different perspectives on players is what has really led this community to so much success over the last few seasons. And you'll see that in the comment section. We love to communicate with people. Not so much those over-emotional fantasy football bros that get butthurt, but all of the general community. We love to interact with you in the comment section. Now, I got 90 names to go through in today's video. I gotta fly through these guys, so if you have additional questions on some of these players, be sure to leave those comments down below. I'm going to do my best to answer as many as I possibly can. So do me a favor, hit the like button, because it's about to be a banger here as we get ready for the start of the NFL season, our final off-season rankings. Taylor, throw the quarterback position up on the screen. And we'll start it off in tier 1 because I think everyone knows who's in tier 1. We got Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, and Lamar Jackson. Now for Josh Allen, dude has been a top 2 fantasy quarterback for 5 straight years and has more pass-catching weapons this year than he's had in years past. There's really no reason to put him anywhere than right at the top. After him, it's Jaden Daniels, a huge rookie year. We know we have the rushing upside, and they just gave him another weapon in Deebo Samuel. Then we move down to Lamar Jackson, a Verge 4,000-yard passer and a Verge 1,000-yard rusher. With that rushing upside alone, we're locking him into tier 1. But all right, now we move down to tier 2. We got Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, and Patrick Mahomes. For Joe Burrow, the only thing keeping him from tier 1 is the hope that his offensive line can protect him this season. The defense in Cincinnati, though, is pretty freaking bad. They are going to have to throw the football a ton in 2025 to try to pull out a lot of victories. How about Jalen Hurts? The passing volume is down, but that tush being pushed into the end zone 12 plus times a year really boosts his production. Then Baker Mayfield, a team littered with pass catching weapons, including 2 running backs that almost combined for 1,000 yards receiving last year themselves. And then they went out and drafted Emeka Egbuka, and they'll get Chris Godwin back at some time during the middle of the season. Wow, this offense is stacked. Then we finish out tier 2 with Patrick Mahomes. People want to write him off basically after last season, but dude had a bunch of injured wide receivers and an aging tight end. If he could just keep his pass-catching weapons on the field, we would probably see the return of elite Mahomes. Now, we know that Rashee Rice has a pending suspension, but Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, and maybe even Tyquan Thornton give him options. Which takes us down to tier 3, where we have Jared Goff, Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, and CJ Stroud. Now for Jared Goff, he has been one of the most solid fantasy quarterbacks for the last few years. And with Jamison Williams in line for even another step forward, I'm keeping Jared Goff right here towards the bottom of QB1 status. Then we got Bo Nix. Slightly more risk than Goff, but the ceiling is higher. He has the rushing upside and an improved running game that's going to keep defenses honest. Plus, they just gave him another red zone threat in Evan Ingram. How about Jordan Love next? If there is one thing that the Green Bay Packers have an abundance of, it's young, talented wide receivers. Now, it may make it a headache trying to figure out which wide receiver is going to get the rock weekly, but in reality, it just gives Jordan Love plenty of weekly options. Now after Love, we got Justin Herbert, or Herbert, if you're feeling fancy. Now them bringing back Keenan Allen was one of the smartest things they could have done. Keenan and Ladd, paired with Justin's mobility, will keep him as a Verge top 12 guy all season long. Keenan Allen is so much more of an upgrade over senior oven mitts Quentin Johnston. Then we got Dak Prescott. And so many people hate Dak, but the guy was a top quarterback a couple years ago with just CeeDee Lamb to throw the ball to. Now he gets George Pickens and a below average running game. Dak could surprise a ton of people this year. Then Kyler Murray, another quarterback that everyone loves to hate. And he is for sure frustrating to own at times. It seems like at halftime of every game, the dude has like 5 points. But then, in the second half, he always seems to pour it on and ends up as a top 12 fantasy quarterback option. I got him just outside the top 12 this year. How about CJ Stroud? People hate to forget that all of his wide receivers were hurt at some point last season. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell all missed time in 2024. Well, now he's got some new weapons in town. They brought in Christian Kirk and drafted multiple young wide receivers. But let's not also forget, Joe Mixon is hurt and Nick Chubb is coming off of a major injury. The running game is banged up, which means the passing game could have a return to relevance in 2025. So there are your top 15 quarterbacks. Now let's transition over to the tight end position. Now when we bring up tier 1 at the tight end position, once again, it shouldn't be a surprise. We got guys like Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, and George Kittle. For Brock Bowers, not a lot of top tier pass catching weapons in Las Vegas. So once again, Bowers should see a ridiculous amount of volume. Then we get Trey McBride. Similar to Bowers, he really has been the #1 option in Arizona. Now you have to think that Arizona is going to give more volume to Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2025, but there are still plenty of targets out there for McBride to feast. Then we round out tier 1. Number 3 is George Kittle, and he has to be a tier 1 tight end. The start that he could have to the season could be huge. Debo is gone. Ayuk isn't 100%. Juwan Jennings is banged up, and Demarcus Robinson is suspended. We are in line for so much George Kittle to start the season. Now, after Kittle, we dip down into tier 2, where we got Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, and Travis Kelce. Now, for Sam Laporta, if the run game struggles up the middle with the departure of Frank Ragnow, we could see Sam Laporta be more of an extension of the running game in the short passing game. If that's the case, he should see plenty of volume and rack up some receptions. Then TJ Hawkinson should have a chance at great targets to start the year as well, with Jordan Addison suspended. Which takes us down to Mark Andrews. He's totally touchdown dependent, but we saw last year that he is one of Lamar Jackson's favorite targets in the red zone, so it works. Then Evan Ingram now in Denver, and I love the move to Denver. I've been talking about it all offseason long. An improving offense with a young quarterback that can throw the ball down the field. Plus, we've seen Sean Payton produce high-performing tight ends in the past. Then down to David Njoku. Now, Joe Flacco has been named the starter in Cleveland, and we've already seen him produce with David Njoku in the past. Plus, after Jerry Jeudy, you have to think that Njoku is next in line for targets. Then we move down to Jake Ferguson. Yes, Dallas added George Pickens, but this Dallas run game may be bad, and Fergalicious could play a Sam Laporta role and really turn into Dak's hot read check down. Now, a lot of people are off the Ferguson bandwagon after last year because they forgot that not only did he get hurt, but so did Dak, and that matters. But then we round out tier 2 with Travis Kelce, and he's definitely going to benefit when Rice is is suspended, but aside from that, you have to think he takes somewhat of a back seat just in order to stay healthy for the playoffs. When the majority of the Kansas City wide receivers were healthy to start the 2024 season, Travis Kelce was invisible. Now sure, he's still going to be involved in the game plan, but it's probably going to be scaled back a lot more than what we've seen in the past. We can't ignore the fact that he got huge volume last year and still had his worst numbers basically since he was a rookie. Which then only leaves us tier 3 now, where we have Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid, Tyler Warren, Kyle Pitts, and Brenton Strange. For Tucker Kraft, full disclosure, I love Tucker Kraft, but with so many pass-catching weapons in Green Bay and the way that they spread the ball around, he could be super inconsistent this season. Then Dalton Kincaid. He was one of the most efficient tight ends in the NFL last year. He just couldn't stay healthy. But the great thing about looking at efficiency metrics is it tells you that if volume returns, so does production. Now there are a few more pass-catching weapons in Buffalo this year than in years past, but Dalton Kincaid still has a chance to be a top 12 tight end. Then we have Tyler Warren, and I would have him probably a lot higher. The skill says he should be higher, but there's 2 words and 1 reason why I can't put him any higher, and that is Daniel Jones. All right, on to Kyle Pitts next, and everyone hates Kyle Pitts, and I get why. But the guy last season was just 100 yards and 1 touchdown away from being inside the top 12 tight ends. Now he gets a full year of Michael Penix, and Darnell Mooney may miss some time, which means Kyle Pitts is going to see more snaps out of the slot, so he deserves to be this high. And then lastly, Brenton Strange of the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of my favorite sleeper tight ends of the year. He has really shown he is capable of being a big-bodied, big-play tight end in this offense that could be looked at heavily inside the red zone. Don't forget what Liam Cohen did with Cade Otton last year in Tampa Bay. Now, before we dive into the running backs, I need to make sure that you guys are all signed up and ready on Underdog Fantasy. The season is almost here, which means it's almost time to do what we do, and that's win some money. We are going to be doing player pick'ems all week long, all season long in 2025. So here's what you need to do. Head over to Underdog Fantasy or download the app. Create a new account using the referral code HEADLINERS when you do so. You then just need to make your initial deposit and enter a contest of your choice. It can be a player pick'em for week 1. It can be a best ball draft. But if you do that, I'm also going to send you a free 2025 draft guide, since I know there are still so many of you out there that are still drafting your teams. Underdog's also going to throw some bonus funds in your account, and you're going to get a free player pick'em. So much at your disposal, you got to take advantage of this offer. We're going to have so much fun doing player pick'ems. I'm probably even going to do my own separate player pick'em show this season that you don't want to miss. But like always, there's links down in the description if you need so. But now is the time we dive into some running backs, and let's go a throwback. The quick and dirty top 30 running backs. Now, when we bring up tier 1 here, we got Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry. For Bijan Robinson, 350 plus touch potential with an improved offense under Michael Penix. Yes, thank you. But if I'm being completely honest, this could be like 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D, because Jahmyr Gibbs could deserve the number 1 spot as well. He could arguably be the number 1 running back at the end of the season, and with talk of him playing at times in the slot, there's nothing to hate with Jahmyr Gibbs. Same with Saquon Barkley. Sure, he more than likely will regress, but do you realize that he can regress like 62 points this season, and he still would have finished as a top 4 running back? No team runs more in the NFL than the Philadelphia Eagles, and touchdown chances are going to be there weekly. Then we get Derrick Henry. Now, every year people say the wheels are going to fall off. Then every year he goes out and goes off. I mean, come on. Derrick Henry in Baltimore will always be a smash. Which will then take us down to tier 2. Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Genty, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, James Cook, Jonathan Taylor, and Devon Achane. Now for Bucky Irving, he's one of our favorite running backs in 2025. Last year, he finished as the RB14 and really didn't have the starting job the first month of the season. He could be in line for a huge year this year. How about Josh Jacobs? It may be hard to figure out what Green Bay wide receiver goes off weekly, but one thing is for sure, they're going to keep the boxes light for Josh Jacobs, who once again should feast. Then we move down to Christian McCaffrey, who now has Brian Robinson Jr. behind him. And while he will get some touches, CMC is still the guy in San Francisco when he's healthy. He always seems to produce for some reason when he isn't drafted number 1 overall, so that's definitely something to pay attention to. How about Ashton Genty next? Yes, he'll dominate touches in Las Vegas, but I don't know if he's going to hit that whole 1,800 total yards and 15 plus touchdowns to be a top 5 back like a lot of other people think. However, he's still a bell cow. Then we got Kyren Williams, and we've been talking about him all off season long. They paid him. They're committed to him. Stafford isn't 100% healthy, and no running back in football feasts inside the 10-yard line like Kyren Williams. Then we move down to Chase Brown. Cincinnati is going to have to keep their foot on the offensive gas pedal this year. The defense isn't great, and Brown will once again get plenty of work on the ground and through the air. Now after him, it's James Cook, and yes, I know the touchdown numbers were huge last year, and they really do have to regress. They got to come down a little bit, but he could easily lose 4 to 5 touchdowns this year and still be a Verge top 12 running back option. How about Jonathan Taylor? Let's be honest, having Daniel Jones at quarterback is never a good thing, but at least we know that Indianapolis is going to have to run the ball a lot since Daniel Jones is maybe just a hair better than your local high school quarterback. Which takes us to the end of Tier 2, Devon Achane, who's already dealing with a calf injury, and Tua isn't really a quarterback that we want to place a bet on for him to play all 17 games. Because of the injury concerns on both sides, I had to drop Devon Achane a few spots. Now after him, we're going to bring up Tier 3. It's Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Omarion Hampton, DeAndre Swift, Breece Hall, Chuba Hubbard, Travion Henderson, Tony Pollard, and David Montgomery. Now for Kenneth Walker, I know he isn't the model of health, but the way that Seattle is going to run the football this year under Clint Kubiak is something that you really need on your fantasy team. Take Kenneth Walker, just be sure to not miss out on Zach Charbonnet later. Now after Walker, we got Alvin Kamara, still highly underrated by so many people. Between checkdowns and the lack of overall weapons in New Orleans, Kamara will once again be a mainstay on offense, even like he was in New Orleans last year when they sucked then as well. How about Omarion Hampton next? And everything hinges on what really happens with Najee Harris. If Najee misses time, Hampton is an absolute smash steal. If Najee plays, I hate to tell you, but he's still going to get right around 30 to 40% of the backfield snaps. Now that isn't going to kill the value of Omarion Hampton, but it is going to lower the ceiling. But don't worry, 2026 is the year of Omarion. After him, though, is DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. The change in the coaching staff in Chicago, if nothing else, is going to provide more scoring in this offense. Plus, we know the offensive line is much improved, and Swift is the clear number 1 in Chicago. We then have Breece Hall, and with Braylon Allen in the mix and a new coaching staff already talking about a backfield committee, it's hard to not drop Breece down to a mid RB2 this year. It doesn't help that Justin Fields also runs the football and likes to call his own number. It's like a 3-way split in the backfield. We then get Chuba Hubbard, and this Carolina offense is going to start 2025 in a way better spot than where they were at in 2024. In the second year of a Dave Canellis offense, this team should provide more touchdown opportunities, which really could help a guy like Chuba Hubbard. Then Travion Henderson, super high ceiling, and he has looked great this offseason. The biggest question, how involved is Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson? Are they really going to get touches? Because really the only part that concerns me is goal line touchdowns being vultured by somebody that's not even rostered. As much as I love Travion Henderson, there is no clear line of what this backfield is going to look like this season, but he's still a solid RB2. Then we got Tony Pollard. We know that Tajay Spears can't stay healthy. The offense has to be better under Cam Ward, and Pollard may be the latest running back that you can draft that has 300 touch potential. And then lastly, in Tier 3, it's David Montgomery. And with the retirement of Frank Ragnow, the middle may be a little bit more muddled, and that could hurt Monty at times. Still a run-heavy team with lots of offense, and Monty will get all the tough touches, especially on the goal line. But now that takes us to Tier 4. We got James Conner, Aaron Jones, RJ Harvey, Bill Krosky Merritt, Tank Bigsby, Caleb Johnson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Zach Charbonnet. Now for James Conner, everyone is expecting more Trey Benson this year, and I don't blame them. James Conner is getting older and is constantly banged up. That and Arizona trails in so many ball games, they really can't rely on the running game a ton. If this backfield turns into a little bit more of a split like so many people are anticipating, that's why I gotta drop James Conner down a little bit compared to years past. Then we get Aaron Jones, highly underrated, had a 1,500 total yard season last year, and now people don't even want him. Sure, Jordan Mason will be in the mix, but Jones will still be highly utilized in the Minnesota offense. Then we get rookie RJ Harvey, and I fanboyed way too much over the drafting of RJ Harvey in Denver. I hate to say it, but if it wasn't for the signing of J.K. Dobbins, I might have RJ Harvey above Omarion Hampton. Now, Dobbins is going to take just enough to really limit the ceiling of RJ Harvey, at least at the start of the season. I really kind of view this situation similar to Tampa Bay last year, where it took about a month for Bucky Irving to really just take over. That's kind of what I see with RJ Harvey. Now, after Harvey, we got Bill Krosky-Merritt. And yes, he gets a massive boost after the departure of Brian Robinson Jr., but we also don't want to over-exaggerate here. Austin Eckler and Chris Rodriguez could both still have a solid role in this backfield, plus Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt does lack some pass-catching upside. He is still definitely one of those running backs this offseason that just flew up draft boards, though. Now, after him, we got Tank Bigsby. And Tank should have first crack at that early down work in Jacksonville this season. But aside from that, he's one of the later running backs that you can draft in fantasy football that actually has an established week one role. Everyone else kind of a dice roll. After him, it's Caleb Johnson. And my biggest concern here is trusting Arthur Smith. It's the same dude that throttled back Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. Caleb isn't the problem. Heck, even Jaylen Warren isn't the problem. Arthur Smith is my worry here. Then we got Isaiah Pacheco, and it's great to have him back and healthy. We know that Kareem Hunt is highly inefficient, and hopefully Kansas City can keep some wide receivers healthy this year to keep the boxes less stacked. If that's the case, then Pacheco could be a great mid-round pick for a lot of people. And then lastly, it's Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I mentioned earlier when talking about Kenneth Walker that we really wanted a piece of this Seattle backfield. They're going to run the football a ton, and if Kenneth Walker were to go down again, Zach Charbonnet is an immediate RB1 in fantasy football. At this point, when you're starting to dive into some handcuffs, Charbonnet needs to be towards the top of that list. Which means the only thing we have left is our top 30 wide receivers Taylor throw up tier 1, where we got Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now for Jamar Chase, yes, I know he could regress, but do you realize that he could regress 80 points and still have finished inside the top 3 at the position last season? And with how these Bengals will have to be throwing the football in 2025, Jamar Chase stays at number 1. Then Justin Jefferson. With Addison suspended the first 3 games of the season, as long as Justin Jefferson can stay healthy, he will once again be a top 3 wide receiver. Then CeeDee Lamb. Dallas may have added George Pickens, but that run game is so bad, they are once again going to have to throw the ball a ton weekly with Dak Prescott, like they did a few years ago, when Lamb was the wide receiver 1 and Dak was an MVP candidate. Then we get Malik Neighbors up next at number 4, and I'm well aware of the toe injury. He's had it for a long time, but all signs point to him being 100%. And if he can do what he did last year with a crap quarterback room, dude about to go off this year with Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, or Jackson Dart. I don't care who it is. And then lastly, to round out tier 1, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now there are some changes in Detroit this season, but the number 1 option in the passing game still will be Amon-Ra St. Brown. And with his double-digit touchdown upside, he deserves to stay inside tier 1. Now after him, we go into tier 2, Drake London, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, and Ladd McConkey. For Drake London, don't forget what London did the end of 2024 with Michael Penix. He averaged well over 10 targets per game and will be close to that once again this season with Darnell Mooney already injured. How about Nico Collins? Nico has looked unstoppable on the field the last 2 years when he's healthy. Sure, there are some new pieces in the passing game, but that running game is banged up and Stroud will once again need to feed Nico. Then we move down to Brian Thomas Jr., and I cannot believe the amount of people that get just straight pissed off over Brian Thomas Jr. being a guy I'm passing at his current ADP. People need to remember, we don't hate players, we hate ADP. And with the addition of Travis Hunter and De'Ami Brown and Brenton Strange getting a larger role this year, I'm sorry, I would just prefer Brian Thomas Jr. in the mid to late second round instead of the late first round. Because if those big plays do drop off at all, y'all gonna be coming back here and asking what to do. Now after him, it's Puka Nacua. I have him a couple spots lower than most as well, and it has everything to do with Matthew Stafford's back and the fact that Puka hasn't had to share with a wide receiver like Davante Adams over the last 2 years. Cooper Kupp was either hurt or less than 100% over that time frame. Davante Adams is a huge upgrade to this passing offense. Now after him, we got Tyreek Hill, the ultimate what if in 2025. What if Tua stays healthy? What if Tyreek Hill returns to what he was just 2 years ago? All I know is he is cheaper than he has ever been, and sometimes you gotta risk it for the biscuit. Then we got A.J. Brown in Philadelphia. Same thing goes for A.J. Brown. So many people upset over me passing on him at his ADP as well. This guy is just too boomer bust, and Philadelphia throws the ball less than any team in the NFL. Don't forget, in each of the last 3 seasons, A.J. Brown has had 40% of his season-long scoring in just 4 games. That right there tells me that he's probably going to win you 4 matchups a season. But that leaves me to ask you, what happens in the other 13? Now, after A.J. Brown, we got Ladd McConkey, and yes, adding Keenan Allen could eat into the ceiling of Ladd McConkey, but it's also a great wide receiver for Ladd to learn under. They aren't just going to forget about Ladd McConkey. After what he did at the end of last season, he has definitely earned a target share in this offense. Which then brings us down to tier 3. It's T. Higgins, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr., Davante Adams, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, and the rookie Teteroa McMillan. Now for T. Higgins, glad that he finally got paid. And we already know that him and Chase can coexist just fine and the ceiling remains high. How about JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba? He is truly the best wide receiver in Seattle, and even with Cooper Kupp in the mix, JSN will lead this team in targets and has the highest big play potential. Then we got Terry McLaurin, who just got paid, finally in Washington. Now, we've already seen him produce in this offense in Washington. We saw it last year. But now defenses also have to worry about Deebo Samuel. I'm not going to overhype Terry McLaurin, but now that he's paid and happy, he's got a chance to be a high-end wide receiver too once again this year. Then we got Mike Evans, and I mean, come on. Lock him in for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns every single year, one of the game's best wide receiver twos that there are. How about Garrett Wilson? And so many people want to talk about the connection in college between Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields, but it's looked a little bit shaky at times here this offseason. Now, the Jets don't have a ton of options, but with as much as they're going to be running in 2025, I had to drop Garrett Wilson down to a wide receiver 2. Then we get DJ Moore. And on a team that is stacked on the offensive side, I'm still going to lean the way of DJ Moore here slightly, just due to his ability to gain those yards after the catch. Then Marvin Harrison Jr. I would love to believe that Arizona will just force the ball to Marv Moore in 2025, but it's also the Cardinals, and they very rarely do what they should. It's that concern that has us a little lower on Marvin Harrison Jr. Then Davante Adams. Had him higher this offseason, but with the back issues to Matthew Stafford, he's dropped a few spots. If Stafford stays healthy, Adams will be a steal in 2025 though. How about George Pickens? Doesn't it feel like we're about to see what George Pickens really could be in a pass-heavy offense with a capable quarterback where the top defensive attention isn't looking his way? I'm drafting George Pickens everywhere this season. Then we got DK Metcalf. And you have to think that Aaron Rodgers just locks on to DK Metcalf majority of the time. But that's kind of where I'm a little bit worried. We're relying on Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith coexisting, and that's not something I want to bet a lot of money on. You got to remember that Arthur Smith is by far the worst offensive coordinator in football. Now let's just hope that Rodgers calls his own plays in the huddle and DK ends up being a decent discount here this year. And then lastly, to round out tier 3, it's the rookie Teteroa McMillan. Now he reminds me a lot of Mike Evans, and Dave Canellis is going to use him in the same fashion. In this improved Carolina offense, we could easily see Teteroa McMillan get 130 plus targets this year, which then brings us down to tier 4, where we have guys like Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, Matthew Golden, Emeka Egbuka, Deebo Samuel, Rashee Rice, and Roma Dunze. Now for Cortland Sutton, a lot of people expect Sutton to be higher, but his numbers last year were highly dependent on touchdowns, and now with Evan Ingram in the mix, those touchdown numbers could come down just a skosh. How about Calvin Ridley next? The clear wide receiver 1 in what will be an improved offense in Tennessee under Cam Ward. Last year we saw Nick Westbrook-Akine take away a lot of touchdown opportunities. With him gone, those touchdown opportunities could easily migrate the way of Calvin Ridley. Then we get Matthew Golden, the rookie in Green Bay. And even though this team is stacked with young wide receivers, he is the one that's standing out this offseason. He has looked unguardable over the last month. And with Jaden Reed less than 100%, Matthew Golden right here in tier 4, alongside Emeka Egbuka, one of my favorite rookie wide receivers this year. We know that Chris Godwin won't be 100% till almost November. How about Jalen McMillan already being out, and Emeka Egbuka can play any wide receiver position on the field. His volume could be huge. Then Deebo Samuel, and we've been talking about him all off season long. He's going to be used all over the offense, and people are going to regret not taking a chance on him for where he's being drafted this season. He's going late enough where the risk is almost non-existent. After him, it's Rashee Rice, and really, we have no idea what to expect from Rashee Rice. How long is this suspension going to be? 3 games, 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, more games? We have no idea. I can tell you this. If there was no suspension looming, he would be a top 12 wide receiver. If he misses almost half the season, it's going to be hard for him to crack the top 24. It's just really hard to draft a guy when there's so much unknown surrounding him. Now after him is Rome Odunze. Now yes, we know that Chicago is littered with weapons. We already talked about DJ Moore a little bit earlier. But Rome Odunze is going to be that wide receiver in this offense that gets yardage and touchdowns in bunches. He may not be racking up 10 targets a week, but he is the guy that can get you 100 yards and a touchdown off of just 3 catches. In what looks like to be a high-powered Bears offense, I want another piece of that passing game, so Rome Odunze right here in tier 4. But let me add something here to the end of the wide receiver section, and this is super important, so be sure to listen. There are almost 50 wide receivers that deserve a spot inside the top 30. There may be a name that you didn't hear, and you're like, man, why does this guy hate so-and-so, or he totally misses this guy, or he's sleeping on this guy. No, I'm not. I just can't fit 50 names into a list of 30. There are guys out there that I absolutely love that I don't have room for. We got like Xavier Worthy and Devontae Smith and Jamison Williams, Zay Flowers, Travis Hunter, Ricky Pearsall, Jerry Jeudy, and the list goes on. They all deserve a spot up inside the top 30. But this is why we have been telling everyone all off season long that you can draft wide receivers late this year. Load up on your running backs early. Get yourself 3 stud running backs. Throw that running back in your flex spot. One of the biggest cheat codes in fantasy football is starting 3 running backs. 3 stud running backs, that is. Because you can't score fantasy points without touches. And if you can start 3 running backs who have 20 touch potential, that's 60 touches right there. And then on top of that, you add the depth that we have here at the wide receiver position, your team will be absolutely stacked. So I hope you followed some of our off-season draft strategy videos, because if you did, championships are coming.